And a very good afternoon. It's just gone midday here in Queensland and also just gone after 1 o'clock on the eastern seaboard, that being Tassie and Victoria and also New South Wales. Doing some juggling behind the scenes, throwing the balls up in the air. Anyway, we'll get there. We will. Now, headlines from around Australia. Residents in far north Queensland, or as the Americans would say, Queensland, are bracing for winds of up to 260 k's per hour as tropical cyclone Narelle approaches the coast. Now, the Category 4 cyclone is forecast to strengthen into a Category 5 system before crossing with severe impacts on Friday. Now, the Bureau of Meteorology says tropical cyclone Narelle is now a Category 4 system and could strengthen to Category 5 by tonight. Tropical cyclone Narelle is still expected to make landfall on Friday morning just to the north of Cohen. Now, the Nationals WA leader Shane Love MLA has blasted the Cook Labor government as impotent in the face of Western Australia's escalating diesel crises, accusing it of failing to use the powers available to ensure that fuel reaches the industries and communities that keep the state running. And how true is that? A new national report has revealed many regional airports across Australia are operating at a financial loss, with local councils increasingly forced to subsidise infrastructure that regional communities rely on every day. Now, the survey of regional airports found more than half are operating at a loss, with a median annual deficit of $192,000. 1 in 8 Aussie water entitlements are now foreign-owned. Foreign ownership of Australian water has eclipsed 5,000 gigalitres for the first time, with North American investors controlling more than a third of overseas held entitlements. Federal member for Nichols, Sam Birrell, has been appointed Shadow Assistant Minister for Agriculture in the new Shadow Ministry, pledging to remove roadblocks which are holding back agriculture. And that's it for our updated news at the moment. We'll come back to you in a second with Alan Moran. We're going to talk all things a disaster for Australia. If you think about what's happening with the fuel crisis, that wasn't a crisis according to Chris Bowen and also Anthony Albanese, and that it was a crisis. And now we see that even J.D. Vance is worried, and that Iran has said it's going to basically destroy the world. And it could very well do that. At least we're paying a lot more for our fuel if we can get it. And then what about fertiliser and other bits and pieces like machinery and stuff like that? It won't get through those straits unless Iran lets you to do that. I wonder what would help encourage them to let you get through those straits. Oh, maybe stop bombing. That might be an idea. I don't know if Donald Trump really cares about that at all. But we are out on our own at the moment, and we do need a very, very good government. Now, there's no doubt Australia is in precarious circumstances with the crises in the Middle East. There are no major policy responses from the federal government, and this follows decades and decades of either the Conservatives or Labor of entire economic destruction of our manufacturing base and energy security. It's just we are no longer competitive. Dr. Alan Moran is Principal of Regulation Economics. Alan, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Mike. Great to be here with you.
How bad is it?
Well, it's pretty bad if the war is prolonged, and it looks like it's going to be prolonged much more than President Trump suggested in the first instance. We're sort of we only ever had 30 days supply of petroleum products, which is pretty low by world standards. Most countries have got 60, 90 days. That's going to be drained soon. But as you inferred in your opening, this is a crisis of our own making. We've been discouraging the search for gas and for oil. We've been permitting the closure of refineries for at least the last 15 years, probably longer, mainly under Labour, but the coalition wasn't much help itself when it was in power. So basically we've created this ourselves. We ought to be immune from much of the major issues in terms of gas and oil. We've certainly got stacks and stacks of it if we were permitted to explore and to develop it, but we haven't done so. So we're now very much dependent on imports of oil and petroleum products. We are trying to avert a gas crisis by talking about redirecting gas from export markets to the domestic market, which may or may not be a good idea, but it would not be a necessary idea if, in fact, we hadn't prevented the development of gas in the first place. And the sorts of suggestions that are in place of saying a 20% requirement for domestic usage can become very expensive. For example, the Ichthys gas development off the coast of Western Australia, they built a pipeline to avoid Western Australia because they'd have had to have a 15% set aside for domestic use. And they built the pipeline to Darwin instead. Now, the cost of that, you can work out what the cost is because it's well known what the costs of undersea pipelines are. The cost of that is about $2.68 billion. In other words, they had elected to spend $2.68 billion to avoid landing gas in Western Australia, which would have required 15% of that gas to go to the Western Australian market. So that's a very expensive requirement if that sort of requirement is placed on us in certain circumstances. If it was placed on us in the first instance, it may well have been that project, which is about a $40 billion project, would not have proceeded. So we having gotten ourselves into this pickle in terms of raising our costs through net zero, preventing coal being used and forcing it to be displaced by unreliable wind and solar, we have elected to increase our costs generally to manufacturing, which has closed down a lot of our manufacturing industries, and has left us in a precarious position in terms of fuel supply.
Yeah, it's as some would say, the chickens have come home to roost, haven't they? And then we see, we continue the bad policy we have at the moment, the renewables pushed by most of the governments in this country. And if we keep going down that path, besides destroying the environment, which they will, or destroying farmland, and I read somewhere where they can take up to 70%, which is just terrible. We haven't learnt from the past, and it seems even though we have this crisis at the moment, our government is still doing the old ostrich trick. Let's put our head in the sand. If you put your head in the sand long enough, you're not going to come up for air, are you?
Yeah, he's trying to paper over the cracks there of its own making. It's just named a fuel czar, an energy czar, who's a lady who's been very much involved in the government's renewable push in the past, and she's now the energy czar. I'm not quite sure what she's going to do, but we've arrived at this position because of government policies, and those policies are continuing. They certainly Labour's policies are continuing under Labour. The coalition may be changing, but it wasn't that much different from Labour until recently. Indeed, Angus Taylor was the industry minister, and he was featuring very much what he called an Australian way to get to net zero, which was, carbon capture and storage and hydrogens and all that sort of stuff, which has proved to be worthless. In fact, have a negative value. The Labour itself, of course, has this future made in Australia policy, and that policy is basically subsidising renewable energy and hydrogen. Indeed, its first major project was a hydrogen hub, basically in New South Wales, and that hub has now collapsed. It was a $400 million. This was going to be a future which was going to ensure we have reliable supplies, low-cost supplies of what is the next big thing, allegedly, the hydrogen. No, it didn't work. I mean, and that's the pattern with all of these government interventions. Government always has populist good ideas, and they kind of throw a lot of our money at them. They never work, never ever work, and they're just wasted. Not only they're wasted, they distract entrepreneurial energies away from things that might work. It's time that we actually started disengaging from these kind of positive attempts to redirect the economy, which have actually only led to losses and falling living standards.
Yeah, it's a real worry, isn't it? I look at the farming industry, or the farmers in, say, Victoria, with the Compulsory Acquisition Act that Jacinda Allen rushed through without having the final report on the environment. It doesn't. I mean, if government continues to do what they're doing, and she is very enthusiastic, to say the least, to really bugger up the farms, and the property will decrease in value. It will destroy the communities. It will create a fire hazard. The list just goes on and on and on. But when you start walking into someone's business and taking away their right to run that business how they see fit, and if they do a good job, then great, and if they do a bad job, then they need help. But to walk in and say, we're acquiring your land, and your land is going to be used because we're going to plonk either wind turbines, or we're going to put in these great interconnected towers, which is transporting the renewable energy from other parts of Australia when it's windy. It doesn't augur well for farmers, and if you destroy that, if you take away the ability to decide on what to do with your land and your crop and the way you're growing or maintaining it, then all of a sudden we have, many would say, a communist society, and people on the land then won't be able to exist unless they do exactly what the government says. Don't see any money being handed out to them, except your bit of land is worth that amount. No, it's worth a lot more because you've got a great lump of metal between one side and the other side. What do we do about it? How do we get government back on track?
Well, for a start, I mean, we're building all these transmission lines, etc., simply because we need them for wind and solar. I mean, because it's a less dense form of energy, and it's more precarious, it's more intermittent than the coal that it's replacing. So you've got to have a lot more of these transmission lines, and farmers don't like them going through their land, and so they object to them, and then there's compulsory purchase. Farmers don't like being adjacent to wind farms and to solar farms, and they try to object. But as you said, Jacinda Allen is preventing those objections taking place. But there's an even bigger issue, and that is the farmers. Many farmers voluntarily are making their land available for solar farms and for wind farms. Why is this? Well, the reason is that they can obtain a lot of money, or they think they can obtain a lot of money, because the wind farms and the solar farms are so heavily subsidized that the promoters of those programs can afford to buy out the farmers and install them on the land. And therefore, we've got a reduction in the amount of land available mainly for agriculture, but forestry as well, I guess, simply because there are these huge subsidies which make it far more profitable for a farmer, at least on the face of it, to actually give up the farming and actually give his land away, or sell his land availability for wind turbines and for solar panels, which, as we know, basically give no value, in fact, give negative value to the economy as a whole. So for negative value for the economy as a whole, farmers are being presented with opportunities to earn far more money through redirecting their land from productive purposes to unproductive purposes. And this is compounded by the then requirement to actually install more and more of these transmission lines to obtain this low density, poor performing power to transmit it to major centres of usage.
Yeah, it's really quite concerning. I mean, a lot of the companies who Stephen Nowakowski was telling me the other day about 3 months ago, that a lot of these companies that are financing the wind turbines, they're designed. That particular company that manages the wind turbines are designed to close the doors 20 years after they've started. And the reason is that the wind turbine itself will most likely need to be probably replaced, and they can't do that. So what happens is it's the landholder that is responsible then for that turbine to get rid of the waste of that turbine. So what they have to do is remove these close to 300-foot towers. Actually, not 300. I think the meters, aren't they? 250 meters or something. Plus, with these whopping great blades, they've got to get rid of those. How do they do that? Where do they get the money from? So, and look at the solar farms. It's the landholder who's responsible for those solar panels. So, even though they say be careful, if it's too good to be true, it most likely is too good to be true. What do we do? How do we? And I understand, by the way, why those in the land accept these offerings, because it's a really tough life, and you think, well, my land is, it's got to produce, so at least I'm guaranteed of X amount coming in every year. To try and sell it would be near impossible, and the damage it does to the value of not only that particular lot of land, it's the neighbours. They also
exactly. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, whether or not it would be a net value if, in fact, the farmer was recompensed, I don't know. But certainly, any farmer who's going into a project like that ought to make sure he's covered for the dismantling charges. And in fact, I think Premier Minns in New South Wales has said, well, if you're not, it's too bad. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of the sort of buyer beware thing. But you've got to make sure you've got a contract which doesn't leave you holding the baby when the other beneficiary has collapsed. So that sort of contract is essential. And Stephen Nowakowski is quite right that an awful lot of contracts have been signed, and that the farmer is going to be involved in the cleanup, which is going to be take a huge chunk, if not totally overwhelm the amount of profit that might have been made in terms of the rental charges he's receiving over the 15 or 20 years that the operation exists. But the big thing is that the only reason why it makes any sense whatsoever to give over your land to a wind farm and to a solar farm is because there's a massive subsidy to wind and solar, and that the people who are building these plants can afford to pay far more than the land is worth. And that subsidy is created by government requirements, increased requirements in terms of the amount of wind and solar that must be incorporated into our energy supplies, and now with the newer projects in terms of just what they're buying, in terms of the government is contracting for 10, 15 years ahead with a certain price, which makes it irresistible for entrepreneurs to come in and say, I'm going to build one of those, and we've got a guaranteed source of income. But that can only be made by government and offsetting the cost of that guarantee onto the consumer and onto the manufacturer, which of course leads to the decline in manufacturing, which we've seen all too readily in Australia.
Yeah, it's. I have to say, it's a worry. You would think government, with food security, should always be a priority. At the moment, food security seems to be, way down at the list. And then we have the current fuel crises, which we do, and it is a crisis, and it will get worse. We see the panic buying, which I find very un-Australian. I mean, before COVID, we didn't really have these panic buying episodes. Maybe if your favourite beer was going to be not made, you'd go out and buy a few extra slabs just to get through the weekend. But we have many problems, and I don't know how to get around it. How do we get around these issues? One of people, or the way they think now, they've got to buy all the fuel. What do we have to do? How do we get around this? How do we start prioritising properly?
Well, long term, there's no problem. I mean, long term is dead easy. We just have to get the government out of the business. Essentially, we've got massive amount of just about everything we need in Australia in terms of raw materials and energy, etc. The only reason why we are facing this problem is because we've not been allowed people to develop it. And the clear answer is long term. Well, we will allow them to develop it. That basically we get rid of those regulations which prevent the search for and extraction of petroleum products, for example. How do we cope for this in the interim period? Well, I mean, the government's talking about rationing, and maybe they'll have to do that. I mean, usually the best form of rationing is the price, and I mean, rationing one way or another just represents the fact that there's a scarcity, however it's been created, and the best way of resolving that scarcity is to allow the demand and supply to operate and with an inevitable increase in prices. The other alternative is that you redirect it to the favoured areas, and I mean that creates a whole bureaucracy, and basically that bureaucracy is going to be favouring certain areas rather than others, and will not be doing so in an entirely economically rational way. But the long-term issue is easy. We just have to get, it's apparently easy, but governments don't see how to do it. But we just have to get governments out of the game and allow things to progress. Short term, well, we have got an inevitable problem that we've got too little supply right now as we stand, and that's an upshot of 2 decades of a poor policy. How we handle that is a real problem. There's no clear solution. There's nothing but pain in doing so, unless, of course, this Middle Eastern friction, abates very quickly.
It's if we went back to common sense and decided to rebuild a few power stations and maintain them a little better and stuff, it still wouldn't do one thing for the crises at the moment. Now, can you might be able to illuminate this for me? It says that 20% of the fuel for the world goes through the Straits of Hormuz. Okay, why can't we then get that fuel from other parts of the world, or increase the supply from other parts of the world? So that even though there's 20% of the world supply, and the 80% is the rest of the world, at a time like this, an opportunity is there for the other suppliers of petroleum products around the world to actually increase their production, and therefore we still have 100% of production. We don't have the crises. We don't have the problem of fuel. We still might have a problem, though, with the fertiliser and other bits and pieces, but that could also be addressed. Why aren't we doing that?
Well, I think we will. We are. If you look in terms of share prices of businesses, oil firms and gas firms, which have got supplies other than in the Middle East, or other than requiring to go through the Straits of Hormuz, those prices have gone up, and there'll be a massive incentive to increase supplies. You can't sort of just ramp it up to get rid of, to actually fill that additional 20% overnight. Certainly we will be seeing, and we are seeing, everybody outside of the Gulf area increasing their supplies, and that will help, because the price has now gone up, and it's become much more remunerative to jack up your production levels. So that will help, and it also will encourage people to be searching for more oil and gas in places which are less insecure. So the problem does resolve itself in the end. I mean, there is no worldwide shortage of oil and gas. There's plenty of supplies available at a price. The price goes up, they'll be searched for elsewhere. But that's not going to cure the immediate problem, except in a minor way, because to bring in whole new prospects, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars. We're talking about years and years and years. Coal, of course, could come back readily, but to build a new coal generator in Australia would probably be 4 or 5 years before it came on stream, and it's even more for some additional petroleum supplies.
Yeah, I agree. Great conversation, by the way. Always enjoy these, and then I can keep talking, which I mustn't because I have other people I have to talk to. So stop me next time. Your latest published article is called "Australia's Precarious Circumstances." Where can they read that?
It's on my website. It's regulationeconomics.com. It's published originally in the Spectator, Australia Spectator. But most of my stuff is available on regulationeconomics.com to be just downloaded.
And any other way they can find out about the infamous Dr. Alan Moran?
Well, on that site itself, there is quite a lot of detail of not only publications, but who I am and the sorts of thoughts that I have, etc.
Yeah, Alan, always a pleasure. Enjoyed this very much. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike.
This is the Country Telegraph. And welcome back to the Country Telegraph. Nice to have your company too. Got a feel for the good folks up at North Queensland, around Ingham and upwards, even Townsville. I think 260 k's they said, just up from Cowan. They're very strong winds and could be even stronger. Now because we're on the Gold Coast, we had a tropical cyclone just recently, and they were forecasting winds to be in the between 100 and 200 k's. We got a few gusts, but it sort of died down, and that was scary. So just imagine, though, if you think about it, just imagine how a tropical cyclone or a cyclone with that power would be. And we are all thinking of the folks up there. You've got to hunker down, and our thoughts and prayers are with you. Now, Alison Levy, I'll find out in a second, is Publicity Officer for Southeast Field Days on the 20th and 21st of March. It's on. And with over 500 exhibitors, the focus of this event is on showcasing the latest in agriculture products, services and equipment. Competitions include the South Australian Yard and Dog Association, state championships, as well as a scrap metal art competition. And they always attract plenty of interest. And I've got to tell you, they are a lot of fun too, and very important for the economy. There are entertainment options for both young and old, as well as a multitude of food and locally sourced wines. One person who's just been running around like a headless chook, Alison. How are your nerves at the moment?
Well, surprisingly, you asked me about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Normally, pretty
We have
chaotic.
yep.
We've had a steady stream of the larger exhibitors slowly coming in since like late last week, and today's the day when all the pavilions start filling up. So all the wines and schools and government bodies, all that type of thing, they all start moving in all clothing. So it gets a bit bedlam. About 4 o'clock this afternoon will be very busy, but there's a lot of trucks on site, and it's very hard trying to find a quiet spot where there's not people, trucks, dust happening.
How long has this event been going on for, and how important is it for the local economy?
Yeah, so this is Yeah, so this is our 46th year. The Lions Club of Lucindale have run it. So I suppose a lot of the profit goes back into the community, this whole region, this lower southeast of South Australia. So the Lions Club are really proud that in the 46-year period, we've donated over $3 million back into community groups and organisations, so schools. And it's not just Lucindale and our closest bigger town, Narracourt. It's across the whole region, even into Western Victoria. Money gets donated back. So a lot of people ask for money and for certain projects, and the Lions Club are really happy to help wherever we can. So it's that giving back to the community, and we're just so lucky to have such an amazing event like this in our small little area, because Lucindale, in the scheme of things, is a very small country town.
For those not familiar, I used to work at 5SC in Mount Gambier. How's that? But tell us about
Well, there
the
you
area.
go.
There you are. I mean, were you listening? Actually, I used to drive the boss nuts.
Yeah.
But it's a great part of the world, the southeast South Australia. And Mount Gambier, wonderful place. Narracourt. You have, what else do we have? All those places. Mental block time. But it's a magnificent
Yeah.
Robe, there's another part of the world. And you're not that far from Adelaide either. I mean, you're close to some major
No.
areas. Tell us about the area.
Yeah, so we're really lucky. We're 4 hours from Adelaide, and Robe. So we've got some beautiful seaside areas. So Robe's very famous for the cray fishing. So Robe, Beachport, Kingston, all those areas are fantastic fishing. Kingston, and then coming back where we are, Lucindale, grazing. So there's a lot of sheep, a lot of cattle, a lot of cropping. We're very lucky, got an abundance of water underground. Very dry seasons the last couple of years, but this last spring was amazing. So my husband and I, we're on a property, so everyone's feeling very positive. If you ignore the fuel prices at the moment, the seasonal conditions are very, very good. Narracourt, very famous for the Narracourt Cave, so a lot of fossils, very ancient kind of area, I suppose. And then another little area town is Penola, and that's really famous for the Coonawarra wine region, which you probably have experienced if you're based in Mount Gambier a few years ago.
Of course, there'll be no drinking. Sorry, I couldn't do that with a
No.
straight face. I mean, and you got all
Oh,
those.
no, believe me,
There'll be a few
there's
drinks,
drinking happening here. Yeah, of
but
course there will
listen,
be.
you got all those evils around you. You got some of the best wines in the world around you, and you still
Yeah,
can't forget
yeah.
the wines with a frothy head. You know, a good beer too. What about food there? What about food stalls and barbecues and stuff like that?
Yeah, so at the Southeast Field Days, we have, I suppose, those three main food courts. There's a lot of the businesses, so Timboon ice cream, and a lot of we try and have a real mix. It's not just hot chips and ice cream. There's a whole mix of Asian influences and everything. And it's also a great fundraising opportunity. I know our local football club, they do a barbecue that's very busy. The Scouts group, local Scouts group, I think they sold like $6,000 worth of soft drink at last year's event. So it's the real key fundraiser for a lot of organisations. So the three food courts, there's a lot of options for everyone, as well as the sampling and buying wine. We have distilleries, we have wine, beer, all that type of thing. Our local golfing club, the country club, they run the tavern. So that's a very popular place to sit in the shade and drink a couple of cold beverages for the two days of our event.
Singing my tune there, Alison.
Yep.
Nothing like a cup of cold beverages. And you know what? I don't know about you. I don't like the fancy stuff. I just want a sausage on a piece of white bread, bit of sauce. And what else could you have? A bit of sauce and maybe some onions if you want to create havoc later
Yeah,
on.
yeah, get a bit fancy.
A couple of cold ones or a good red. Tell me about some of the other exhibitors there. The real exhibitors.
I suppose when you think of an ag field days, you think about machinery. But I suppose our event, we try and cater for we want something for everyone. So there's like driving around this morning, and I saw a field bin. They were just trying to sort it out to get it into its little position. And big trucks, road trains, for Queensland, for us, a road train down here is like two trailers. That's big. I know up in the northern Australia, road trains 3. But we have all sorts of any kind of machinery you can imagine. But then for everyone else, there's clothing, accessories. I think we've even got someone from Bordertown, which is a town 45 minutes north of us. They're bringing chickens. So you chook and love or something they're called. You can buy a little chook to take home with you. So there is absolutely everything, plus all the entertainment. We've got Airtime FMX who are doing amazing stunts. They go to all your key bit like the Grand Prix and major shows around the country. So we're really lucky to have them. We have laser tag for the older boys. We have a petting zoo and someone just free. Like we try and keep a lot of things free. So like it's free, under 16s free to get in, but adults paying. But once you're in here, it's a lot of free stuff to look at. It's not just kicking the tyres. And I think something's massive crane. Good timing now. We've got a crane going past and trucks and stuff. Okay. It's very, very busy this time of the year.
Yeah, I have to tell you, it is a fantastic time, and it's, old mates catch up with each other, and people that you might have had a stoush with, catch up, and nothing better than the having a couple of beers and a bit of a nosh up and really enjoying it. What about the general interest pavilion? What do we? How do people find out?
Yeah, so
what's happening in it?
Yeah, so we have, I suppose, the 3 big pavilions. One has we call it the market pavilion. So it has a lot of clothing, jewellery. We have Mini Jumbuck, which is a really well-known company that's based in Arracore, famous for its Australian wool and dooners. They sell Aran Willing clothing. So they're organising, Shannon, the manager there, she's organising a fashion parade for us. So we're really excited to get that back going again after a number of years of not having it. So there's just a lot of clothing, adults and children's, in our northern end pavilion. You'll find all the wines, distillery, food, preserves. We have cooking demonstrations. There's a lady called Kathy Hughes who will be doing, she is absolutely passionate about quinces. So I know she's cooking up a storm for samples, and she'll be cooking and talking about all things quinces, which she's very passionate about. And then, of course, our 3rd pavilion, which is AgTech. So that's where all the technology and latest and greatest information, all the innovative stuff. And we've got a really well-known agronomist called Felicity Turner who's going to be doing multiple presentations. So they're going to be very interactive throughout our event. So that's a really plus, I suppose, for a lot of people, a lot of farmers coming in. So we try and cater for everyone, I suppose.
And what time do you open and what time do you shut?
Yeah, so 9 till 5 on Friday and Saturday. And then, so it will be very busy. So there's a lot of free car parking. There's no issues with car parking getting here. You can buy your tickets online or at the gate. Any information, go to our website, which is scfd.com.au. You can look at our program online, but obviously there's copies everywhere once you get to our event. So, yeah.
Now, the last thing is it Levy or Levy?
Levy, actually, yeah.
Because we had neighbours and they were called Levies, but lately everyone's changed it to Levy.
Oh, there you go. This is my married name.
It sounds very posh.
Yeah.
It sounds very posh. Alison, thank you so much for your time. I think what you're doing is a magnificent job. I think it's what the community needs, and I think as long as you keep producing,
definitely,
I think all augurs well for the future for those of the land. And I have to say, for those that haven't been to that part of the world, it is magnificent. One of the great areas of the world. And,
it is.
Just buy a couple of bottles, a couple of gallons of wine.
We're very lucky to be here.
Yes, fantastic. Alison Levy, thank you.
There was a bit of gin testing last time.
Good
lovely meeting you, Mike.
Lovely too. This is the Country Telegraph. We're back again, all happening here at the moment. Peter Rundle, MLA, is Deputy Leader of the Nationals in WA and member for Roe. He's the Shadow Minister for Water, Sport and Recreation. a Katanning farmer, a businessman, husband and father, Peter Rundle was first elected to the seat of Roe at the March 2017 state election, following resounding wins in both the 2021 and 2025 state elections. And now in his third term, Peter continues to represent the people of Roe with humility, passion and diligence. Peter, thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much. Great to be with you.
Tell us about your electorate. It's an amazingly large electorate and diverse.
Absolutely. I'm very fortunate to be the member for Roe, and it's now expanded from 100,000 square kilometres to 120,000 square kilometres with the most recent distribution, but a very diverse electorate. Obviously, agriculture is a big part of it, but I've also got towns the likes of Esperance, Bremer Bay, which have got magnificent coastlines, and tourism is really becoming a big thing in my electorate. So it ranges from, as I said, agriculture, a lot of sheep, a lot of grain, and then we go to places like Esperance, which has one of the biggest ports in Western Australia, with iron ore and other minerals being taken out, and of course grain as well. Then to the likes of Bremer Bay, Hopetown, Hyden, Wave Rock, another great tourism destination. So very lucky to be the local member representing all of those areas.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the issues in your area that are of concern and that the current government is not addressing properly?
Well, as you well know, we've had the scenario with the live export situation, which now we've lost around about 4 million sheep from the WA sheep flock because we've had a loss of confidence. So just as the prices of our sheep have actually increased, we've got people going out of sheep, and that's important because we're having pressure on the processors now and volume of sheep. That's one of the big things. We've had a lot of controversy with the South Coast Marine Park that the current government has put in place, and now of course the demersal fishing ban as well, which is affecting a lot of the Western Australian coastline and affecting once again the likes of Esperance, Hopetown and Bremer Bay. So from an agricultural sense, and no doubt we'll talk about fuel and fertiliser as well, which is creating a real worry at the moment. But also, I think there's only 12 houses for rent in a place like Esperance, which has got 14,000 people. So housing is a real issue for us, and cost of living, of course, which is hitting all of Australia.
Yeah, it's a shocker, and if you look at what's happening in the Middle East, it's not going to stop for some time. Best laid plans of mice and presidents, that doesn't go the way it should go. Tell me about the fuel situation. I know your party has been very critical of the current government. They seem to be like the cohorts in crime in Canberra. They seem to be sort of walking around waving their hands in the air, wondering why they can't take off.
I've got to say, it's quite disturbing, and the amount of phone calls that we're getting and emails, of course, from our constituents, and it's a real worry for me because being a farmer by trade myself, I understand that you like to have everything in place for your farming operation and ready for seeding, and as we know, in the next couple of weeks, many of our farmers will be getting underway seeding canola and the like. So to have that lack of fuel security is a real issue, and we've been asking questions in Parliament every day over the last couple of weeks to the Premier, just to try and jolt him and his government into understanding the insecurity, I guess, that our farmers are having. So it's a real worry for me. It's a worry for my constituents, and not just fuel, but fertiliser as well. So two issues that we absolutely need to get sorted, and we need some urgency from the government.
What do you suggest they do at the moment? I mean, we hear that there are answers. There are other parts of the world. We had Dr. Alan Moran on before, who's an economics expert and very, very credentialed, and he said they are working on those things at the moment. But for the short to medium term, we ain't going to see much traction at all. If you don't get a sort of a reprieve that the people on the land have access to not only fuel, diesel and petrol, but they also need fertiliser. If that's not forthcoming, what do you see, and let's just look at your state and then the rest of the country, what do you see happening to the country when it comes to our most important ingredient, and that's food? If you haven't got those items, fertiliser and diesel and fuel, tell me, do you start putting all your product in bags of, old wheat bags and start walking? Because I don't know how you're going to get it to the larger markets to feed the rest of Australia.
Look, absolutely, and we had a record grain tonnage last year, or grain crop of around 27 million tonnes in Western Australia. But now we're hearing, farmers saying they're thinking about whether they will plant a crop or, whether they'll scale back, etc. So that challenges our food security, both domestically and, of course, our exportability as well. So as I said, we're urging the government. The Premier's had a round table last week. He's put his Energy Minister on it, who apparently are meeting every day. Actually, what I'd like more than anything is some decent communication, because we seem to have a lot of stuff going on behind closed doors, but our people out there on the ground are not getting any information. And of course, our independent fuel distributors have largely been left high and dry. So we're wanting to know when will they be able to get access, because they supply a lot of our towns and our farming operators and transport operators right around regional WA. So, we're hearing now that the Premier is frustrated with the likes of the ACCC, who are potentially holding up some of the federal government options that they are looking at. Obviously, they are probably looking at price gouging, but what we need is actually fuel release. And we're worried because in Western Australia we've got no refineries. We're reliant on some of those federal reserves being distributed across from the eastern seaboard to Western Australia. So real concerns there as well.
What about, because you're a very big state and you've got a lot of land, can you do your own fertiliser instead of relying on overseas stuff? Do it yourself?
Well, we don't really at the moment, but what we have got is potential to do that in the northwest, in the Pilbara. So we have got potential of fertiliser plants up there, but what we need once again is probably greater priority on domestic gas, and we've got plenty of gas in Western Australia as well, as you well know. But a lot of it is prioritised for export. So this, I think, will shake things up and make the government have a bit of a think about the way domestic gas is used and the ability for ammonia and also for urea plants to thrive in the Pilbara using our domestic gas to actually produce it here in Western Australia.
Yeah, you have an amazing state. There's only two things I don't like about your state. That's your two football sides in the AFL. The rest of you are pretty good. And we won't go into that. I've been told I talk too much about my miserable side in Melbourne, and they are miserable. So I might end up following the Dockers. You never know. Where do we go from here now? How do you see the next couple of weeks to wrap this up?
Look, I think, as I said, what I firstly want to see is better communication from the Premier and the Minister for Energy. Real concerns there. I think the no doubt liaison between state and federal is incredibly important. So we've got apparently National Cabinet happening today. So I want to see what's coming out of there as well from the Prime Minister and from Chris Bowen, because what we have them. This is a supply chain issue, and it's also people hoarding and all of these things. What we're hearing on the ground is that most of our farmers generally order fuel in March for their seeding program in April and May. So they're not doing anything unusual. All they're doing is getting their fuel supply or attempting to get it for the seeding program coming up. So I find it a bit disingenuous at times when we're being told about people hoarding and all of these things. All they're trying to do is get their normal fuel supply. But, the general average is around about 30,000 litres required for a normal seeding program in Western Australia, and a lot of people are having trouble getting more than 2, 3 or 4,000 litres. So I can understand the worry there. So better communication required, and just telling the truth. Tell people, okay, it may not be here for another week or another 2 weeks. Just get it out there so people can stop worrying.
Yeah, 3,000 litres not enough, just enough to mow the front lawn, just about. Peter Rundle, MLA, Deputy Leader of the Nationals in WA. Thank you very much. If somebody wanted to find out more about the Nationals or you and what you do, how do they do that?
Thanks very much for having me. It's been great.
And what if they wanted to get hold of you? How do they get hold of you? If they wanted to have a chat to you, a bit of a natter, how do they do that, Peter?
The best way is probably contacting either my Narrogin or Esperance office. So they are at either end of the electorate and servicing 2 of the largest towns in the electorate. So more than happy to talk to anyone.
Yeah, I can imagine you in Esperance. You'd be probably doing it tough, having 2 crayfish, big bottle of wine, and just watching the sunset. I mean, you have a hard life, sir. But you do have.
It's a great place to be, and we've also got a working port where we can actually look over the port from within town. So it's quite a unique scenario where you can maybe sit at the Pier Hotel and have a wine or a beer and actually look out at the workings of the port. So I'll be more than happy to host you anytime.
All right. You hear a knock on the door one day at about 5 in the morning, wondering where the hell I am. But just get rid of those two football sides, Eagles and Dockers. Don't like them at all. Just don't like them.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm a supporter of one of those football sides. So
yeah, well, there's not much else to support.
We'll leave it as it is, and I'm also the Shadow Minister for
we have your
Sport and Recreation, so I need to support them.
We have your ex-Dockers coach, used to be, that's Ross Lyon. Please, at the moment, he spent $28 trillion on the side. We ain't winning, so please invite him back to the Dockers. Good on you, mate. Thank you. Peter Rundle, MLA. This is the Country Telegraph, and that's it for our show today. We'll catch you same time, same bale of hay tomorrow. Drive carefully and be kind to your neighbours.